long should you work on your game? The answer is difficult, and there's a lot of variables that go into the answer. And I think it's gonna be different depending on what your goals are. But I've been thinking about that a lot lately because I'm working on Regulated City, and it's now, I think we're at 14 months already, which is on the very long end of my kind of game. So how long should you be working on your game? Hey, I'm Pascal from Orangepixel, and on this channel every week I try to upload a video talking about game development, but also business around it, everything that has to do with creating games, releasing games, and making a living out of it. I've been doing it for 20 years, almost 20 years, celebrating my 20th year as an independent game developer, which has been a great ride. The channel is also growing. Thanks for all the new subscribers. Keep it coming. Don't forget to subscribe on this video. Today's topic is pretty simple. How long should you be working on your game project from prototype to releasing it? Interesting question. So I just usually try to keep project categorized into two variations. One is a short game, and those usually are between 4 and 6 months. Longer projects are 12, 13 months, and worst case, like Regulated City right now, 14 months. Side note on that one, while I've been working on Regulated City, I also did a bunch of things for Residual, my previous game, launching it on new platforms. Did a lot of updates on many of my older games, so there have been months where I have not actually been working on the game. So I guess we're still around 12 months on this project, but it's also possible I'm just kidding myself on that. I don't really keep track of it, and I just don't want to know. It's a long and big project. Now there are a couple of pros and cons to either doing short games or doing long games. Some of those things you might not really think about at first, so that's what makes them important and interesting. Let's talk about the pros and cons of doing shorter development cycles. So let's say a couple of months, preferably if you can do it in a month, but creating a good game these days in a month is gonna be a pretty hard thing to do. So let's focus on like 5 or 6 months of development time, full time. So the first upside of doing a shorter project, obviously less time spent on the game means less money required to build the game. Now some developers actually keep track of the hours spent in a game or working on a game, and then calculate the amount of money it makes divided by the amount of hours, and that way they know what rate they are making on an hourly base. But if you're self-employed, I think that's just nuts. That's just a silly way to calculate how much you're earning, because if you're self-employed, first of all, your focus and your concentration and your passion on the project is a lot bigger than when you're working for somebody else. And of course, you're just it's just a different way of working on a project. I prefer to just calculate a monthly rate for myself. So if I work 5 months or 6 months on a game, I multiply it by 2,000 euro. That's what the game preferably is going to be making over its lifetime. In that way, it will be profitable after that point, obviously, and games sell for 10, 12 years. So shorter development cycle means you have to make less money to make it a profitable project. Downside of that is you have a lot less time to brand and market your game, pretty much. That's been a problem, and I'll get to that as it's a big pro of longer development cycle, but you just have less time to make people interested in your game, because you've only been developing it for 5, 6 months, and then you're releasing it, it's out there, and you're probably gonna be moving on. Preferably, if possible, you're gonna be spending another 6 months just marketing the game and then releasing it. But that's a hard thing to do, because you'll probably be also working on the next game, and then you'll have to promote the old game, work on the new game, and that's gonna be very hard to juggle. I think. I haven't tried it, but I can imagine it's gonna be very hard, because once a game is done, you wanna release it and you wanna move on. And yes, of course, early access is also an option. Work on the game pretty quickly, put it in early access, release it like that, and see how much feedback you're getting and what people say about it, and then keep tweaking on it and working on it as long as there's interest from players. But early access is pretty much a launch. Not many game sites or gamers or streamers will pick up an early access game unless it's really big and a lot of people are talking about it. Also, once you publish it from early access to actually releasing it, nobody's going to care and nobody's going to pick up or talk about it again. So early access is an option, certainly, but it doesn't really make your launch any bigger. Unless you have an extremely good game that a lot of people are playing in early access, of course, but then it doesn't matter how long your development cycle is anyway, because you got a hit game. We're not gonna have a hit game. Not you, not me, not the guy in the back. Nobody's gonna have a hit game. That's very rare. But still, you can dream. Now, personally, I really prefer doing these smaller games. 5, 6, 7 months of development, release it and done. But I've also found it increasingly harder to do. My games just have been growing and getting bigger, and after releasing a bigger game, it's very difficult to then focus on a very tiny game. At least it feels like that game is then not complete or has less features or isn't as much as you gave to players in your previous game. So there has to be more added, and there has to be... It's an increasing problem. That's possibly very personal, just me having that problem. Let me know if you also run into that issue. But I found it very difficult making smaller games after releasing bigger games like Ashworld, Space Grunts, Residual, and now Regulator City. It's slightly difficult toning it all down, but I'm gonna try that on the next game, and then I'll have to figure out how to overcome all these problems, as I won't have a lot of time marketing the game because the game will be done faster. That brings us to creating bigger games and the pros of doing that. You can build up wish lists for much longer. You can build up a community much longer. And that's all a lot of positive stuff, because the amount of wish list I'm getting for Regulator City, I'd never get those in the first 5-6 months of developing a game and then releasing it. I would have a lot less wish lists. And of course, we all know wish lists are important because, yeah, they allow you to maybe get some featuring on Steam, although you'll need a lot of wish lists, like 10,000 or more, or a lot of extra wish lists at the last week before launching, stuff like that. But at least they count and they are important. So the longer you work on a game, the more you can build up all that stuff. And a community on Discord, you just have a lot more time marketing and promoting your game, and also getting feedback. And you do beta cycles and demos and all those things that you will probably not do on a shorter project, because the game will be done by the time people are checking it out. So that's a very positive thing when you're working longer on a project. Now, a funny example is that I won't name the names, but there are a couple of games currently in development. I know one game that's been in development when I released Ashworld, or before I even started working on Ashworld. That game was in development. Ashworld was released in 2017. That's 5 years ago. I know a couple of other games that have been in development before I did or started on Residual, and I released Residual last year. The thing for those games is that a lot of people have seen those games. Like, they probably have a lot more wish list than I had for either Ashworld or Residual, or the couple of games I did in between. So having a longer development cycle certainly builds up a lot bigger community, a lot more wish lists, and hopefully for these guys and girls and companies, these games will actually sell well. Because the downside, obviously, of a longer development cycle, money. Where does the money come from while you're working on a game? These games have, they needed investments, they needed publishers, they needed Kickstarters, they needed all those things, and they're pretty much burning money right now. As I'm recording this video, they are burning money. All that money that you got up front will be gone by the time your game is released, because you probably spend it all, and then all that money has to be made back, and then you're still breaking even. You're not making a profit. So longer development cycle is great for building up community and all that stuff, but it also costs a lot. I also know that I'm pretty sure that some of these developers will not be making a second game or a next game. It just doesn't work out financially. I already know that. I fear that these developers will also know that, but still, Game development is also a passion, so you just gotta try. And it's not a bad thing if you can get a lot of people to invest in your game upfront. You can just move on to the next project after that. Make sure you keep a little bit of that upfront financing so you can actually work on your next game, and you will then have to find new people to finance your next game upfront as well. It's another way of creating games. I try to find that perfect hotspot between not working on a game too long, but also long enough to build up a community and wish lists and hopefully make back some money. In the end, I guess this video has no good answer. It really depends on your situation. How much money do you have to spend on creating your game? How much time do you want to put into it? What is your main focus? Are you building a game that's gonna easily create a lot of wish lists and followers in a big community? Then you can put more time into a game. If you, however, are creating like a very tiny little simple game, you probably don't want to put too much money into it up front, because it's probably not gonna make back all that money. You're not gonna do marketing and promoting it and all that, because all that promotion and marketing usually costs money as well. So you gotta find the right balance and figure out what kind of game are you gonna make. Is it gonna be something that everybody loves and wants to have, or is it gonna be something that you're really passionate about and you hope for the best? In that case, less months working on it, and if it's really something that everybody wants, work on it like for a year, 2 years, 3 years, if you can afford it, if you can find investors, a good publisher, a partner, whatever. Game business is a difficult thing, that's for sure. And that's pretty much where I'm leaving you with this video. There's no clear answer to it, sadly. It really depends on a lot of things. But I hope it was informative and it gave you some information on your own game project, how long it should take, or if you like games, now you know why some games are smaller and some games are bigger. There's a joke in there, but I'm not going there. Thanks for watching the video. If you want to hang out and discuss all this stuff, Discord, or drop some comments below if you have questions, and don't forget to like, subscribe. See you next week. I'll be here, you'll be hopefully there or somewhere else. Doesn't matter as long as you're watching. Right, bye.